Good afternoon and welcome. We all know people in the world who carry baggage. Those folks who say, poor me, I can't do this or I can't do that. Well, INFOCOM 2012, today, instead of talking about baggage, I want to talk about a treasure chest. Yes, a treasure chest. The only difference between baggage and a treasure chest is in the content. And for us, we get to decide that content. You are about to embark on my journey, my dreams and aspirations of treasures. So I ask you to bear with me for a few moments. I was driven by a philosophy. In my life, there are no barriers, there are only solutions. And hence, I was born with 3 advantages. Advantage number 1, I was born black in apartheid South Africa, based on the color of my skin. And when I say black, if you were white, you had the vote. If you were not white and you opposed apartheid, we saw ourselves as black South Africans as a unifying factor. We did not see ourselves as Indians or Coloreds or Xhosas or Sesotho's or Zulus. We saw ourselves as one. So I grew up in apartheid South Africa. I was told which neighborhood I could live in, what school I could attend, what kind of job I could hold, what hospital I could use. Apartheid was a harsh period in South Africa's history. Advantage number 2, I was born in a working class family. My father was an alcoholic. And through this disease of alcoholism, he could not hold down a job. Eventually, he became a laborer in a factory. When he retired, his pension was minuscule. My mother was a school teacher. Now, we know the contributions that school teachers make to society are immense, but their compensation is minuscule. So I grew up on the borderline of poverty. But it doesn't mean where you are today, you will forever be there. Advantage number 3. You see, I can walk today, but I don't take this for granted because I could not always walk. When the big guy upstairs was handing out hip sockets, somehow I was not paying attention. In the left hip, where there should have been a ball and socket joint, I lacked the cup. This was discovered at age 18 months. And from age 18 months until age 5, I went through 3 major surgeries. At age 5, that last surgery left me in a body cast from my ankle to my chest. If I wanted to see a different view, this doctor physically had to pick me up and shift me around. Now, INFOCOM 2012, you hear me speak about my 3 advantages, but you just heard me speak about prejudice, economic hardship, and physical disability. And you're shaking your head, and you're saying, this guy's crazy. These are not advantages, these are huge disadvantages. Well, each and every one of us in this room has been dealt a hand of cards. We can't change that fact. But what we can change is how we choose to play the hand. I had a choice. I could go through life and say, poor me. I'm black, I'm working class, I'm disabled, blah, blah, blah. Or instead, my mother raised me to say that sometimes life isn't always fair. Sometimes you have to work harder and smarter than anybody else. If you can overcome these challenges of what you were dealt, then whatever else life throws at you, you shall overcome that too. That is how we turn our disadvantages into advantages. It is purely by an attitude. It is purely by a choice. Will we be defeated and weighed down by carrying the baggage of life? Or will we overcome the baggage of life and choose the treasure chests of life? So here I was. I lay in a hospital bed. I could not do things that other kids could do. But I was able to lay there and dream. And one day a doctor was making his way through the ward, and he stopped at my bedside and he said, son, what are you interested in? I grew up in Cape Town, South Africa. The Indian Ocean on the one side and the Atlantic on the other side. I grew up with the stories of my father and his time at sea. So it is natural for me to be drawn to boats. And a part of our community were fishermen. So when this doctor asked me what was my interest, I said boats. A few days later, this doctor showed up with an entire stack of sailing magazines. Now, I was too young to read the words, but a picture will paint 1,000 words. I fumbled through these magazines and I saw pictures of beautiful yachts gliding through the ocean. And I thought, perhaps someday I could be on a boat. I saw photographs of sandy white beaches with palm trees and turquoise waters, the tropics. And I thought, just perhaps someday I could experience those tropics. You see, those photographs gave me hope. Hope is the energy of change. When we have hope, we can overcome anything. We can choose to be anybody who we want to be. It is those aspirations of hope that become the fuel that enable us to become successful. Well, I overcame being in the hospital. I hobbled around on crutches. When my school friends were running around and kicking soccer balls, I stood on the sidelines and I wanted to play with them. They said, hey, you're a sissy. Go play with the girls. I'm still perfecting playing with the girls. But in that rejection lay an opportunity. I ended up going to the public libraries and I became an avid reader. Now, our public libraries were segregated and I had to go to the coloreds-only library. But the books that I was interested in, the books on the sea, were not in that library. Those books were in the whites-only library. So I found the courage to hobble across to that library. And I started by reading the books in the aisle, and eventually I was allowed to check out those books. At age 11, I ended up reading a book that was to change my life forever. This very book, Joshua Slocum, Sailing Alone Around the World. The story about an American who in the 1895 era circumnavigated our globe. And when I finished reading this book, I knew somehow, someday, some way, I want to be a yachtsman. I want to own a vessel. And I remember running to my dad and saying, hey, Dad, please, can we have a boat? Can we have a boat? But on the money my father was earning, could he afford to buy me that boat? No. But my mother said, son, stay reading, stay dreaming. The application of knowledge truly is power. Well, Dad, as you can't buy me a boat, at least will you take me to the local yacht club? Let me tell you about the local yacht club. Royal Cape Yacht Club. Rich and elitist. The only time someone from my community showed up in this yacht club was to wash dishes in the kitchen or fix broken gear on the boats, not to be an equal. But I went from boat to boat and said, oh, please, will you take me sailing? No. Oh, please, will you take me sailing? No. Please, will you take me sailing? Will you? Yes. I got out there, I got in that boat, and guess what? I got seasick. But I overcame being seasick by being involved. You see, when I first showed up on that boat, I had very little experience or knowledge. I was told to sit here and be quiet. But I sat there and I asked questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? And during the week, I would go to the libraries and read more about sailing. And on the weekends, I would start to implement what I was learning and reading. And then I said to my school friends, one day, I am going to own a yacht. What do you think they did? What do you think they did? They laughed. They said, you're never going to have a boat. You're not ever going to achieve that goal. Give up. Well, we have choices. Do we allow others to determine what our dreams are? Or do we decide for ourselves what those dreams shall be? When I said to my fellow sailors that someday I want to own a yacht, they too laughed. And they said, you'll never have that. So instead, I got myself a red sailing jacket. And I hung that jacket where I could see it. And I said, someday, when I own a yacht, I will wear this jacket as a symbol of my success. Till that day, as long as I have the aspirations of owning a yacht, each time I face challenges or difficulties, I will look at this jacket and know what it is I am working towards achieving. Do you have your version of a red jacket? Do you have your goals and your dreams? And do you know what you are working towards achieving? Life is challenging. Life can be hard. But when you are a dreamer, you only know one possibility, and that is the possibility of realizing those ambitions. And so I stayed sailing, I stayed reading, and I started reading about people like Harry Mitchell, one of the great solo sailors of our planet. He became one of my heroes. Around age 14, the very first solo race around the world was taking place, and Cape Town was going to be the first port of call. And just by chance, on a Sunday, I was on the dock when the third competitor arrived alongside. And when he looked up at the gathering audience, the gathering crowd, and he said, "I need a volunteer." Guess who was airborne and landing on his deck before the word help was out of his mouth? We cleaned up the boat, we stowed the sails, and then I began to ask Richard Broadhead a ton of questions. I asked him about his boat, about the race he was undertaking, the route he had taken to bring him into third place. And Richard Broadhead answered every single one of my questions. And this was significant. The reason it was significant, he had not yet gone ashore and hugged his loved ones or spoken to the world media. But he found the time to talk to this 14-year-old kid, to tell me that if I wanted to be an around-the-world sailor like him, I needed to do the O-Star. I needed to follow my heart. And there were many steps I would have to take in order to be successful. This was a defining moment of my life. My compass course was set. I knew where true north was. And I knew how far off that course I could afford to divert or not. But it was very, very clear to me of what the steps and the directions of my life was going to become. And when I was finished asking questions, his response was, "You know where I'll be for the next couple of weeks. If you have any more questions, come back and ask them, and I'll be glad to answer them." And then he went ashore for the very, very first time in months. I felt honored. I now knew what it was going to take to be an around-the-world sailor. I did not have all the answers, but I knew that inside of me lay those abilities. Inside of me lay a sense of purpose, a strong sense of passion, and a strong sense of conviction. You cannot build any organization, you cannot build any company or government without the passion, the drive, the vision, and the commitment to success. Now, my family was not rich. We, as I said, lived in poverty. To belong to a yacht club, there are yacht club dues. To get to the yacht club, there were transportation costs. My parents could not give me pocket money or an allowance to pay for this. I had to earn that myself. The wealthy sailors dropped things overboard. With fins, a swimsuit, a face mask. I used to dive over the side of the dock and go and retrieve those things. And before I get back, "No sir, no ma'am, that's 100 rupees, that's 200 rupees. And so I began to save this money and to invest this money in myself, because these were cold waters and I needed a wetsuit. With a wetsuit, I could now stay in the water longer and scrub hulls and now charge 1,000 or 2,000 rupees. And again, reinvest that money in being able to take scuba lessons and ultimately buy my own equipment. What I realized out of this journey was that success is not instantaneous. We create our success incrementally, one step at a time. I learned to save that money and to invest that money. And what I did not know was the foundation of becoming a global investor was built in the hard work, the cold waters of Cape Town, sometimes even in the disappointment of what I was involved in. But I had to start thinking about my future, about a career. Now, if you want to own a yacht, what's the one thing people who own yachts typically have in common? What's that one thing? Money. Yes, they are rich. They have a ton of money. Well, there are two classes of people who have money. Either those who are born into it, which I was obviously not, or those who create that wealth. People like yourselves who have created tech companies or being inventors or scientists. And so the people who create wealth for themselves from nothing, they have one thing typically in common. What is that? Come on, what do most of you have in common with each other sitting in this room? What? Passion, yes, but we take that for granted. Ambition, aspiration, no, there's something much more, much bigger than that. Creativity, but there's one word that encompasses a lot of these things. It starts with an E. Nope. Nope. How about education? How about a knowledge base? You cannot create anything without a solid knowledge base. And so I knew that if I was to break the bonds of poverty, I had to gain knowledge. And my mother had always said, son, stay reading, stay dreaming. The application of knowledge truly is the power. Let me tell you for a moment about my mother. My mother was educated in South Africa and then went off to the United States. And she returned to South Africa and eventually ended up as a high school teacher. Now, as I grew up all my student life until I left, my mother not only used to help me with my schooling, because I was behind in my schooling, she also used to help coach other students. And some of these students were brilliant students that she was helping just go up that last little notch. And if she was not coaching students, she was sitting exam papers or she was marking exam papers. And sometimes I used to get very frustrated with her. I used to say, Mom, my sister and I are here. All these other students are not as important as us. We need your attention too. And she always said, no, all of these students are important. They are our family. They are our community. And then at a certain time of the year, she used to go and she used to go and fight with universities for slots to go into certain professions, particularly the medical profession. Because of segregation, they would only issue so many slots. And then a few months later, she would go and fight with the business community to get the scholarship money for her brilliant students to go off, particularly to medical school. And this cycle went on year after year after year. It never seemed to ever stop. And many years later, I returned not having seen my mother for several years. And when I laid eyes on her for the first time, now she was a strong, proud woman. When I laid eyes on her, something looked different. And I couldn't quite place. And then I realized she had no breasts. I said, Mom, what happened? I said, well, a few years ago, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, and they ended up deciding that the only option was a double mastectomy. I said, why am I only learning about that now? I said, well, you had your own set of problems. I don't want to bother you with it. And I said, well, if I wasn't there for you, and besides my sister, who was your support crew? Who was there who helped you through this period? And then she started mentioning names. Names of students that I recognized because I grew up with some of them. She said, well, so-and-so became my oncologist. So-and-so was my director of nursing. So-and-so was the anesthesiologist. Her medical team, who rallied in behind her to help save her life in that very harsh period, were all students of hers. She had made an investment in our community, not realizing that that investment would one day save her life. She got the best medical care. No amount of money could ever have bought that medical care because her students were saving the life of their teacher. So when you do things, make sure that you invest for the right reasons. Invest in your community. You never know when it's going to come back and benefit you, but it's going to benefit everybody inside of your community. We all will become winners. 2 years ago, at age 87, my mother was awarded an honorary doctorate degree from her alma mater, the University of Cape Town, for her contribution to education in South Africa. She never stopped learning, and she never stopped challenging myself and the youth of South Africa to keep raising the bar. So when I stand on the docks of South Africa and ask people to go take me sailing, or I stand looking at the dreams and know where my true north lies, know that I've got to stick on that 360-degree compass course through life. I stand there because behind me was a very powerful mother. Without such a mother, this journey would not be possible. And so, when I look at my options of breaking poverty, the only option is through a knowledge base. There is no other way. When I look at India, I see so many young people with so much potential, with so much opportunity in some ways, if only they could have more access to education. Your country has accomplished so much because of the knowledge base. You've become a leader, but there is so much further you still can go in this journey. The journey is far from over, and it lays in your hands. So I made the decision that I have to find a career that was going to support this dream of wearing my red sailing jacket. And so I went back to public libraries, and I was fumbling through all kinds of magazines. And around age 16, I came across a magazine about commercial diving. And this magazine spoke about how these commercial divers traveled all over the world. I wanted to travel. It spoke about how they were part of an amazing team. I had learned teamwork through my sailing. And he spoke about how much money they were earning as divers. I said, gee, with that money, I can afford to wear my sailing jacket. I can afford a yacht. I will be a diver. But the article was not over. The article went on to speak about how some divers lost limbs and even lost their lives. And I had to pause. And I had to ask the question, am I suicidal? If you are going to take on a career that you know might kill you, there's a high risk. Does that not make you suicidal? Yes. But I am not suicidal. I am a calculating risk taker. We do not perish from the known. We are more likely to perish from the unknown. And so I felt that if I could go to the world's best commercial diving school, I could mitigate some of that risk by having the best training. So on further research, that school happened to be in Los Angeles, California, the other end of the world from Cape Town, South Africa. But I made a verbal commitment to myself. And I said to my school friends, when we graduate from high school, I am going to Los Angeles. I will be a diver. And what do you think they did? They laughed. They said, you're not going anywhere. You're going to end up with the factories like our fathers. You're going to end up being an alcoholic like your father because you have foolish aspirations. Give up. There are no glass ceilings over any of our heads. Success lay only in one person's hand. Our hands. It's not up to somebody else. It's up to us to create our own success. And I would like to have seen the expressions a few weeks after we graduated high school, when they got a postcard from Disney World, California. And on the front was Mickey Mouse, on the back I wrote, I wish you were here too. You see, I went to that country called the United States of America. I went there on a one-way plane ticket in the days when a foreigner could travel to America on a one-way plane ticket. I went there with $350 in my pocket. And I went there with the first month of a 9-month program paid for by everything that I had saved and my parents could borrow against the house and the retirement package. But more important, I went to the United States with an attitude that failure is not an option. Too many young people in the developed world or in the affluent communities, they think, well, if this doesn't work, well, I can always do that or I can do that. They have lots and lots of options. But when you have to fight for every little bit, when you cannot afford to waste 1 second of your life, you only get one chance. When you come from this background, you only have one chance. And you're going to maximize that chance to be successful. I graduated from commercial diving school, and I ended up working on the oil platforms around the world. I was saving and investing my money, and I ended up eventually in the North Sea, the holy grail of commercial diving. But the North Sea is a seasonal place. They can only work in the summer months. And as the summer was coming to an end, I was homesick, and I wanted to go home to South Africa. South Africa had a young emerging oil field, and their summer was kicking in. So I flew down south to go and knock on the doors of oil companies looking for work, only to be told there was no work for me. But yet on the waterfront, I met fellow divers who were picking my brains and happy to see me. And they they were being hired by these companies, and I was wondering what's wrong with the picture. I'm being told by these companies there is no work for me, but yet they were getting hired. And it boiled down to one word: apartheid. It had nothing to do with my skills. It was everything to do with the color of my skin. And the doors never did open to the oil field. But the work I could get was mining diamonds on the floor. Now, many people said to me that that was a job way beneath my skills and my training. Well, there are no jobs beneath any of us. We will do whatever we have to do to put food on our table and to live our dreams. And so I made the commitment to become the best underwater diamond miner. And again, saving all of this money, investing that money. When I went on to shore leave, which was very rare, I would visit shipyards to find out the cost of my yacht. And then I divided my earnings and my savings and the return on my investments into the cost of this boat, and realized I'd be about 88 or 89 years of age before I could afford the boat. So that plan was flawed. Well, we don't give up on the dream because we have a flawed plan. We go back to our treasure chest of life. We go back to find the solutions of what do we have to modify to get to that end result. For me, the answer lay back in libraries. I realized my only option was to design and to build that boat myself. And again, people said to me, "You are no builder, you are no designer, give up." I am no builder or designer. I drew some basic ideas, but I needed a mentor. I needed somebody to help me on the journey. So I went and found some guy, and I said to him, "Marinus, let me help you with your dream because you need a customer. And in return, you help me with my dream because I need a boat." And we formed a partnership. And through this collaboration, we began construction of my vessel. People would show up in our shipyard, and they look at this boat, and they say, "Gee, guys, will you ever finish it?" And I said, "Of course we're going to finish it." And they said, "Do you think it'll float?" And I said, "It's a boat. Boats float." With blood, with sweat, with tears, I worked away at this boat. I went to see a marine banker to try and get a marine mortgage. And before I could explain how to repay the boat loan, he slammed shut his portfolio and he said, "You're a black kid. What do you know about boats? Get out of here. You're wasting my time." Eventually the day came when the truck arrived to tow the boat out of the boatyard, and the crane arrived, and finally we'd wheeled the boat out, and we launched my 38-foot yacht, and I stepped on board for the very, very first time. It was a proud moment when she floated there. And I got towed around to a part of the yacht club where there was this beautiful 100-foot yacht. And that 100-foot yacht belonged to that banker who threw me out of his office. And so I overheard him many times saying how embarrassing it was for his fancy machine to be on the same dock as my piece of junk. And I got tired of hearing that. And I stood on my deck and I said, "Excuse me, sir, is your boat fully paid for? Because my boat is." Never judge somebody if you have never walked a day in their shoes. And so, here I was in South Africa, and my dream was to enter this race called the O-Star Yacht Race, a race made famous by Harry Mitchell, one of my heroes. And so I decided to publicly announce my entry, and I called a press conference. And so the South African media gathered, and very quickly they pointed out some very harsh realities. As I stood on the deck of my boat, they said that my 3 predecessors who had done this race, each had been a naval officer. I never went to the Navy. Each one was given the national yacht of the country. I built my own boat. Each one was sponsored by the government. I was searching for a sponsor. And each one of those entries had been supported by the Sea Cadets. I looked behind me, and there was nobody. The front page of the sports section, "Petersen sails floating coffin." They said I was going to kill myself in this boat. With that, all possibilities of sponsorship were dashed. I faced 2 choices: quit or find a way to go forward. Well, you know the answer. With the last of my pennies, I knew that there was no possibilities of remaining in South Africa. There was a thing called GPS. It was the latest in technology of navigation at the time. I could not afford that in my few pennies. So I ended up buying some 500-year-old technology and bid my family goodbye. I bought a sextant. People like Ernest Shackleton and Magellan, they had used this device to find their way across the oceans of the world. And I bought a book, Celestial Navigation for Yachtsmen. Now, don't ask me where I was for the first 7 to 10 days. I was lost. I was busy reading this book, trying to figure out how to use this device. But life will always test and challenge you. The answers lay within ourselves. If you want to find out something, the information is out there, but it's up to us to figure out how to extract that information. And I'm sailing on the high seas. I'm gone for over 30 days on the high seas, and I'm feeling lonely. I'm looking for a ship, just any ship to talk to. When the boom, which carries the mainsail, came flopping across the deck, almost like a golf club going at a golf ball, except the equivalent of the golf ball was my forehead. And it split open my eyebrow, and I was gushing blood. I was in deep trouble. I did not have a distress beacon to say I'm in trouble, nor did I have a medical kit on my boat. All I thought I had on board my vessel was this rusty needle and sailing twine. Could you stitch your forehead back together with this rusty needle and sailing twine? Could you? Nah, nor could I. So I had a huge barrier. But if I am to survive, I've got to dig deep into the treasure chest of life to find that solution. I remember in science, I remember learning that if you have a bleeding wound, and if you apply pressure to the wound, it'll stop bleeding. If you hold the wound together for long enough, it'll coagulate and grow back together again. Apply pressure, hold together. And with that, I came up with my solution, a clothes peg. I sailed over 600 miles, 800 miles to the nearest doctor. The doctor said, son, the wound is fine, but you need psychiatry help. This clothes peg is a symbol. It's a symbol of overcoming a barrier to finding a solution. Each and every one of you, you have faced many barriers, but you found the solutions. Again, it's back to a knowledge base. It's back to that hunger to survive, that basic instinct that we as mankind always have, that instinct of survival. I did not make England that year. I ended up in Ireland. I had more damage to my boat. The South African media told me I got lucky. The floating coffin almost killed me. I should quit. The Irish, they looked at me and they looked at my boat. And I remember somebody saying, laddie, where did you come from in this thing? And I said, South Africa. He shook his head and he says, you crazy. But laddie, where did you say you're going? And I said, I am entering the O-Star yacht race. I'm going to race from England to America solo. He shook his head and says, now we know you are crazy, but we will help you. For the first time in my life, I found a community who rallied in behind, who didn't see the size of our boat, the color of my skin, or what I lacked, but who saw the potential, who saw the inspiration and the aspirations, who saw the same compass course that I was on, and was willing to align their compass to help support my compass. Together, we can achieve amazing things. My boat was rebuilt, and I said thank you. But thank you is not enough. We must let our actions speak louder than our words. And so I went into the schools, the Irish schools, to talk to their children about the importance of a dream and to apply their knowledge base to the realization of those dreams. In our world today, without education, without particularly educating young women, our world will be doomed. Our only salvation is education, is a knowledge base. And in this journey around Ireland and the Irish schools, I ended up meeting an Irish lass, and I fell hopelessly in love with her. Her name is Gwen, and we became inseparable. But eventually the day came when I had to leave Ireland. I had to sail over to England to enter the race. I might have been alone on that boat, but for the first time I had the support of the Irish nation and the love of Gwen. I arrived in England, and I was put on the same dock as my hero, Harry Mitchell. It was amazing when I saw him for the first time, and I was intimidated by him. And I remember walking up and extending my hand and saying, Mr. Mitchell, I've come to meet you. I've come to greet you. I've come to race against you, and I've come to beat you. And from that moment on, I knew we were going to be firm friends. In the summer of 1992, at age 24, I became the 4th South African to finish the O-Star yacht race. And when I arrived in Newport, Rhode Island, Harry Mitchell was on the dock waiting to take my dock lines. I was not happy about that. I am very competitive. So I had to do some analysis. Why did Harry Mitchell beat me? So the first thing I did was I looked at the size of his boat. Harry had a 40-footer. I had a 38-foot yacht. Small boats have beaten bigger boats by strategy and by positioning. That was nothing but an excuse. So the next thing I did was I looked at his age. Harry was in his mid-60s. I was 24. There was over 40 years of age difference between him and I. The things he had forgotten, I still had to learn. It is called having a mentor. A wise man, a wise person learns from their mistakes. But a smart person finds a wise person because we don't have enough time to make all those mistakes. That's why events like this are so important. Because look around this room at all the mentors you possibly have who can help you grow professionally, grow as individuals, and grow your companies. So Harry Mitchell became my mentor. And Harry Mitchell said something very profound to me. He said, it was your dream to be a sailor. You did it. It was your dream to build your own boat. You did it. It was your dream to race across the oceans and finish this race. Now what? We must always ask ourselves, what is next? Where can we go from here? As you innovate in technology, as you create new gadgets and new platforms and cloud computing, there's always room to improve and to grow. We can never become complacent. And so I said, Harry, I know that you've made 2 attempts to race around the world, and you're going to make your 3rd attempt in 2 years' time. I'm going to come and race against you, and this time I'm going to beat you. And once more, he and I shook hands, and he sailed back to England to his wife, and I sailed back to Ireland to Gwen. And I said, Gwen, I am entering the longest race on our planet known to mankind. 27,000 miles around the world alone. And I want you to help me. And so Gwen became my support crew. And we began the journey of trying to find sponsorship for a new boat. 6 months went by, we raised $0. So then I decided to buy a second-hand boat. So I negotiated the price and began trying to raise money. And I raised some money before I had to make the final payment. And I could not buy that boat. That boat got sold from underneath me. Now there is nothing worse than making a promise to people and not being able to deliver on that promise. So I'm in deep trouble now. And I've got less than a year to go to the start of the race. And I'm trying to figure out, how do I get onto that start line? And I'd hauled the old boat out of the water. And we were living on the boat. And we had no money left. 1 year to go. And then I stopped, and I was looking at the old boat. And an idea came to me. The minimum size requirement for the round the world race is 40 foot. My boat is 38 foot. How big is my problem? How big is my problem? 2 feet. Just 2 feet. So I rushed out, I got plywood, I got fiberglass mat, I got epoxy resin, and I stretched the back of my boat, I repainted my boat, I renamed my boat, and I showed it the world's greatest yacht race in my new 40-foot boat. Where there is a will, there always will be a way. And so I ended up on the docks once more with some of the world's greatest sailors, including Harry Mitchell. And when the race started, we raced from Charleston, South Carolina, on the first leg to Cape Town, South Africa. And my competition was Harry Mitchell. And there were times that he and I were in sight of each other. We were neck and neck. And eventually, when I crossed the finish line in Cape Town, I beat my hero across the finish line. Harry came last, I came second last. It doesn't matter about where you come. What truly matters is about showing up in the right place at the right time, properly prepared in the right game, and knowing who your competition is, who you have to beat. And so, in Cape Town, Gwen helped me prepare the boat for the next leg to Australia. And a day after the fleet had left, Harry Mitchell and I raced each other down to Cape Town. I raced from Cape Town towards Sydney. 2 weeks into the Indian Ocean, I encounter a major storm. And in this major storm, my boat gets turned upside down. And when my boat came back upright, my mast was broken. For me, the race was over. Under what's called a jury rig, I limped back to South Africa. And everybody told me, you got lucky. The floating coffin almost killed you. You should quit. Well, I couldn't quit. I said to Harry, go finish the race for me. I'll be back in 4 years. So Gwen flies back from Australia, and we find some money for a new mast, and I look at the weather patterns. And I realize that there's no way I can cross the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean before the summer is over. I would end up in the Pacific Ocean in the middle of winter. I am not suicidal. I will not take on undue risk. And sailing in the Southern Ocean in the harsh spot of winter was undue risk. So I dropped out of the race. I retired. I was devastated. But I said to Gwen, how about sailing with me from South Africa across the Atlantic to Uruguay? And I'm going to rejoin the fleet in Uruguay and sail back single-handed, unofficially to America, and you fly back. So we make the passage across the Atlantic Ocean, and every day she was seasick. It's amazing when somebody loves you, what they will endure to be with you, what hardships they will overcome when they believe in you. But you have to be a true leader. You've got to truly lead from within, and you've got to be inclusive of bringing people along with you in the journey. We were about halfway across the Atlantic Ocean when we got devastating news. A distress beacon had been activated, and the Chileans were launching the search and rescue. It was the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So they would fly out their search and rescue aircraft, they'd search for 40 minutes and then fly back. The next aircraft would fly back out. On day 4 or 5, the beacon stopped transmitting because the battery ran out. They continued their search. 2 weeks later, we were in Uruguay, and we had to face the harsh reality. That beacon belonged to none other than my friend and hero, Harry Mitchell. Harry was lost at sea. He was 72 years of age when he perished. But he left behind a very powerful message to each and every one of us. Live each and every day as if it is your last day, because someday you shall be right. We truly have to seize the moments. Harry Mitchell died living his passion, living his dream. We need to make sure that we live our passion and our dreams, because all we have is from the day we are born to the day we pass. We truly have to maximize each and every day. And so, I sailed that last leg with a heavy heart in memory of my friend Harry. And I arrived back in Charleston, but I couldn't sit around for 3 more years till the next round the world race. So I said to Gwen that I want to enter the All-Star Yacht Race again. And once more, she'll prepare the boat and cross the Atlantic Ocean with me, and again she was seasick. And then in England, she did the final preparation. And when the race started in England to race across the North Atlantic, she flew to America to wait for me. And I am racing across the North Atlantic. And very soon after coming out of England, I encounter major fog. And I'm racing in this major fog, and I'm pushing my boat against my competitors. When about 2/3 of the way, or halfway across the Atlantic Ocean, I get hit by a Russian freighter. And my boat has a huge hole in it. And my boat is sinking. And US Coast Guard says, abandon the boat and climb onto the freighter. I could not abandon my boat. My boat was everything in the world I owned. I had no insurance. It was my worldly possessions, including being my home. So, as abandoning was not an option, I got a huge pump. And every hour, I would go to the front of my boat and I'd pump. I'd pump hundreds and hundreds of gallons of water out of my boat. Then I'd go up on deck and trim my sails towards the nearest land, but as the water stopped coming in, no. So I'd go back again and pump. I'd pump 15 to 20 minutes. Go and fix a meal and come back and pump. Go and grab some sleep, come back and pump. I pump 15 to 20 minutes every hour. I did this 24 times a day. I did this for 15 days. Is that not hard work? Yes, but hard work pays off. I got to the finish line. I got there third in my class. I got to the finish line with tremendous incentive. I had to get there before I ran out of energy or before the boat sank. It's amazing when your back is up against the wall and you're again faced with few options. But survival, that instinct, kicks in, and you don't quit. In 2008, the global economy was hit by its Russian freighter. India was not as badly affected. It was affected, but not as badly affected as the rest of the world. People stood up and pumped. But we may not be out of the woods yet. India may face new challenges. You have faced terrorism in 2008, but you face another threat right now from the United States. As the United States remains in this recession, they may not be spending the money on upgrading technology. If the United States and the first world countries don't spend money on technology and don't continue to innovate and to grow, this is going to affect your revenues because you are a technology-driven country. You've got to broaden your horizons. You've got to find other sources of generating greater and greater income. And I truly believe that India has the capabilities of being the number 2, if not the number 1, biggest player in GDP growth. China will surpass the United States by 2017 as the largest economy. But I don't believe that China is sustainable because of their situation with young people and their immigration policy. And I believe that China will fall down and retreat in time to come, which will put the United States back in the number 1 slot. But this country, you have so much potential in your young people. You have great education and opportunities. You have that potential to be the number 2 economy. You have 1 billion people, of which more than half are under the age of 40. So you've got this opportunity to grow and grow tremendously. You have to fix your infrastructure. You have a lot of challenges in infrastructure. You've got to address the bottom of the pyramid and the economics of the lower end of Indian society. And you've got to raise that standard by educating more and more women and more Indian people. But you can be the economic rival to the United States. It is in your hands. And so as a result of pumping, as a result of fighting to get back to that finish line, I found substantial sponsorship, enough to fully prepare my boat for the 1998 round the world race. And once more, Gwen was a part of preparing the vessel. The day before the start was a worldwide press conference. And at that press conference, one of the television networks said, "Neal, we have a question for you." So I stood. They said, 4 years ago you failed. What makes you think you shall succeed this time? I said, failed? I said, yeah. You quit. You dropped out of the race. You failed. And my response was, I might have been hit on my head and had to use a clothes peg to put that back together again, my forehead. That was a setback. I might have been dismasted and sailed under jury rig back to South Africa. That was a setback. I might have been hit by a freighter and pumped for 15 days. That was a setback. If I quit sailing, if I quit dreaming, if I quit working towards that vision, that would have been failure. Each and every one of us in this room, at some stage or another, faces setbacks. But we take those setbacks and we take the best lessons out of them. We learn from those setbacks and we put them inside our treasure chest of life. And the next day, I was first over the start line, leading many of the big boats. I arrived in South Africa 14 days faster. I was able to beat many of those big boats with a multi-million-dollar sponsorship over the finish line. I was in the middle of the pack. Gwen was again waiting in Cape Town to prepare for the next leg, this time to Auckland, New Zealand. And in Auckland, we began the final preparations for that third leg. That third leg was to go from New Zealand around Cape Horn to Uruguay. That third leg is the most daunting of the legs of the Southern Ocean. I had to dive deep into the Southern Ocean and dodge icebergs. And I had to round Cape Horn. Cape Horn is the southernmost cape of our universe. For centuries, vessels have tried to round Cape Horn. Many vessels have been driven onto the rocks. It was Harry Mitchell's dream to race around Cape Horn. He lost his life in trying to achieve that dream. Here I was taking on the Southern Ocean and Cape Horn. And when I got 300 miles from Cape Horn, once more I encountered a major storm. My boat had no sails up. I would surf off these waves, only to be driven upside down with no sails up. I would then pop back up and surf off the next wave to be turned upside down again. We call those knockdowns. I went through 38 knockdowns in the first 4 hours or so. And I was wondering, this night, would this boat be my floating coffin? Or am I right to dream?
We've taken sort of gear all over the place, lockers broken. So it's been pretty tough.
2 days after surviving the storm, Neal sights Cape Horn. At last, he experiences the awe others wrote about in the books he read as a child. He feels immense joy. After all, more people have traveled into outer space than have sailed past this place alone.
Well, there she is, the Horn and I. What a sight. And it's just been absolutely great being here. It's taken 17 years of dreaming. It's taken a lot of planning, a lot of preparation. It's taken the support of many people. My sponsors, my family, who are supporting Gwen. But we are here. I think of Harry Mitchell, who gave his life for this site. And a few minutes ago, I paid tribute to my friend Harry. You know, it's a very special place, this, the bottom of the world, the edge of the world. And to get here, it takes courage, perseverance, determination, dedication. It takes a dream. I'm 31 years of age, and I've lived my dream now. It's taken hard work, but it was worth it. I've risked my life through 77 knots wind storms, but it was worth it. I hope every young person has an opportunity to live their dream as I've now lived mine. To look at this magic piece of land.
Thank you. Of all the billions and billions of people that have lived on this planet, less than 270 of us have sailed solo around the world via the Southern Ocean in Cape Horn. In 1999, I became a part of this ultra-exclusive family of 270 or less sailors to have done this. Not to prove my critics wrong, but to prove that I was right to dream. We must always have dreams, because without those dreams, nothing is possible. It is those dreams that are our hopes, our energies of success. I arrived in Uruguay having completed a circumnavigation of the world, but not yet having finished the race. Gwen was in Uruguay to help prepare the boat. And after a few days, she started asking if the boat was ready to go to sea. And I said, no, I still have to do this or that. When I finally said, yes, the boat is ready to go to sea, she ended up saying, well, I'm leaving. I said, you mean tomorrow after the start? She said, no, I'm leaving us. I did not see this coming. I had proposed marriage 3 times, including earlier that week. I thought this was my lifetime partner. I did not expect this. But I was not successful, and I watched her walk down the dock. Strike one, as we say in baseball. I don't know how I got through the start of the race and the days that followed. The pain was so immense, but eventually time does heal all wounds. Eventually there was the finish line. When I crossed that finish line, I had just raced 27,000 miles around the world. It was 9 months from leaving Charleston to returning to Charleston. I had been at sea for 195 days, 16 hours at sea collectively. And then I got towed from the finish line back to the dock, and I was presented with my satellite telephone bill. $84,000 of satellite telephone calls I had made. Yes, talk on the high seas was not cheap. But when I arrived at the dock was sinking under the weight of the children. And I looked at those kids, and I remembered 18 years previously, I was a kid in the dock looking at Richard Broadhead finish the first leg of the first race around the world. 18 years had gone by that I had dreamt of that moment. And as I looked at these kids, I knew that Richard Broadhead had no idea, and I can't find him to say thank you. He has no idea that I became a solo around the world racing sailor like him. And what we have to remember, and when I looked at these young people, somebody is emulating us. Somebody is paying attention to who we are, and that's going to help shape who they're going to become. We must always make sure that whatever our actions are, our actions are positive. Because we want our young people to emulate strong, positive actions. As leaders, we have an obligation to ensure that we always hold people and hold ourselves to the highest of standards so that we can be a true example to those young people to what is expected of them. The prize giving party. The best night and the worst night. It was the best night because that night I stood on that platform holding my trophy. This race is so tough. Everybody who comes back truly is a winner. Harry Mitchell lost his life dreaming of holding that trophy. But it was sad for two reasons. That first reason was Gwen was not in the audience. There's no way I could have finished that race. There's no way I could have gone around the world single-handed had she not been in my life and been the support team behind me. There's no way I'd be here in Calcutta with you today on this platform had she not been in my life. Behind each and every one of us are those people who make immense sacrifices for our success. We must never forget who they are and what they have contributed to our success. And it was sad for a second reason. Now what? What do I do for the rest of my life? Where do I go from here? How do you reinvent yourself? Yes, there are other yacht races I could go and do. There's a race called the Vendée Globe, another 25,000-mile race solo around the world without stopping. And it's a possibility. Someday I may do that race. But I moved ashore to start the next phase of my life. And I moved ashore to work at my writing. And I was working on writing an autobiography called Journey of a Hope Merchant, this book. And I had to get back out there and date. And I tell you, I will face a 40-foot wave in the Southern Ocean any day than the rejection of a beautiful woman. And I came home from a date one evening, only to discover my house had burnt down. And I lost everything. I had a brush fire. I lost the original manuscript to the book, the computers, the backups, the hard copies. All was on the property. My photographs and my trophies, everything was lost. The only few things to survive was this pile, my sextant, and these two books. Strike two. But a friend said to me something good was going to come out of the fire. At that moment, it was hard finding the good in that fire because I was homeless. I did not want to return to my boat. So I'm driving back to the house the next day after all the media. And all of a sudden, my car engine is revving, but my car's stopping and slowing down. And I realized I'd just blown the transmission. Strike three. In baseball, 3 strikes, you are out. But life is not baseball. It doesn't matter how many strikes you get. You step up to the plate, you grab that bat, and you keep swinging. And so I called a car dealer friend, and I said, Eddie, you've got to help find wheels. And this is my budget, and I need a reliable car. Now, my budget and the word reliable should not have been in the same sentence. I was looking for a miracle. But it's amazing that how miracles do happen. He called me back the next day, which is now 2 days after the fire. And he says, guess what? A car just came into the lot today. You must come and get it. So I phoned my various friends looking for a lift with the car dealer, and they're all at work. I phoned my various dates. I get voicemail. But around lunchtime, my phone rings, and there's a stranger on the phone. And this stranger says to me, she had just read about the fire in the newspaper. Is there anything she can do to help? I said, yeah. Can you give me a lift to the car dealer? So we arranged to meet at 5 o'clock that day. On August the 9th, 1999, at 5 p.m., my life was transformed, was changed forever. At 5 p.m., I laid eyes on this woman. I remember exactly what she's wearing. I thought, wow, this is my lift to the car dealership. We ended up going to the car dealer. We ended up going to a movie, and we had a late-night snack. And some 5 months later, I ended up marrying her. Had Gwen not left me, had the house not burnt down, had the car not fallen apart, at the worst moments of my life, in the ashes, it was the flames of the fire that ignited our hearts. I want to introduce you to my wife, darling Neal Petersen. And it is amazing that when the right person comes into your life, it is amazing what can be achieved. 1 and 1 is not 2. 1 and 1 is equal to 11. It is about the 11th power. Make sure that you find the right relationships, because it's amazing what you can accomplish. Today, Dolly and I have traveled all over the world. Yes, it's our first time in India. And my roots are in India. It's the first time I've come to your country and meet your people. And it is just so amazing by what we can achieve. Yes, I ended up seeing the Caribbean. I ended up with a boat, a beautiful catamaran, a 50-foot catamaran out of the magazines. We ended up building a home in the Dominican Republic. But it's not about the things that you get. It's more about how do you achieve your success, and then what do you do with that success? How do you transition from being successful to becoming significant? And it is about that significance. What are you going to do in your world to make an impact? And I was raised always ask 3 powerful questions of myself. And 7 years ago, I added a 4th question. That first question I was raised to ask, and my mother always said, if you can emphatically say yes to these 3 questions, life will be with less struggle. That first question was, whatever I do, is it right for me? And every one of us in this room can justify that, including a drug dealer. Which brings us to the second question. What I do, is it right for my family? And again, we can find a justification. The drug dealer can say, look at the nice house my family lives in. Look at the nice cars we drive. And most people stop at that second question. The third question is, what I do, is it right for my community? Now the drug dealer is in trouble. In no honesty can that drug dealer say, this is right for his community. But today we live in a global community. We truly are a global society. What happens in one part of the world has a huge impact in another part of the world. 7 years ago, Darlene has a son, and he ended up having a child. And I got to hold this little granddaughter in my arms. And as I held it in my arms for the very, very first time, I started thinking about that 4th question. What I do, is it right for me? Is it right for our families? Is it right for our community? But how about, is it right for the next generation? We truly have to think generationally. If we can focus on generations and the future generations to come, and let that be a part of the guiding factors of what decisions we will make, as we address things like climate change and global warming, as we address technology. And today I see more and more technology, but I see so many people going through life like this, and completely oblivious of what's out there in that big world. We must lift up our heads. Technology is here to enhance who we are and what we do. Technology is not who we are. These are the tools. Let's use these tools wisely to become stewards of our planet. You have the obligations to invent and deliver technologies that's going to help make our society truly successful. But it's how we use these technologies is critical. Never stop smelling the roses. Never stop dreaming. Never lose sight of your vision. And always know where your compass lies. Where is that 360 degrees? Where is your true north? Because we have a choice. We can go through life and say, oh, poor me. Or instead, we can take every experience we have had and realize we get to put these experiences inside of our treasure chest. We have the choice of whether we choose to carry baggage or instead carry a treasure chest. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Do we still have time for questions? We do. Okay. How about just a couple of questions? Anybody? Yes. Do we have a microphone? Here we go. And if does the second person have a question so I know where we're sending the microphone next? Okay. Yes, okay. Go ahead.
Firstly, I think the entire house is spellbound. So I'm just gasping for breath. And I have a very personal question. If she comes forward, your wife, that would be lovely. And do you still have that physical disability as on date?
Yes, I do. I was born with what's called a congenital hip disability. So what they did in the final surgery, they took an inner part of the pelvis, they cut that off, and they grafted it onto the outer part of the pelvis.
Okay.
And so it formed a portion of a cup. So sometimes I still have discomfort, like when I've been flying a long time, like when you're spinning out.
No, but you were jumping. Yeah. I don't think any of us would have done that.
No, but it's amazing in South Africa how medical technology, you got to remember, the first heart transplant was done in Cape Town. back in the 1960s. South Africa has always been on the cutting edge of medical technology. And so, yes, they did a fantastic job on rebuilding the hip. And I'm going down to Kerala, to Kottayam tomorrow. We'll be leaving here tomorrow. And India, again, also has amazing developments in medical technology and in medicine. So I'm going to a Ayurvedic resort, and one of the things I'm going to do is have them check out the hip. And my biggest concern is arthritis, is watching the lining. But I'm pretty sure in Ayurvedic medicine, there's a solution for that and a way of minimizing that future difficulties.
Hats off. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. We have right over here, this gentleman. Grab the mic behind you. There you go.
Yeah, we've always heard that people are very lonely at the top. So how did you come that loneliness during such a long time?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm at the top yet. I
Well,
think
you
there's still lots of room to grow. Well, you overcome that loneliness on the high seas. You are on a small boat, and it doesn't matter if you are on a container ship or an aircraft carrier. It still ends up being a small speck in the ocean. The ocean is vast. When you're deep in the Southern Ocean, you are thousands of miles away from the nearest land. You are closer towards the icebergs of Antarctica and the pack ice than another human being. And when I came around Cape Horn, and I looked north, and I thought about this vast two continents above me, again I realized how small and insignificant we are as mankind, and how little time we've been on this planet. But it is amazing that in the hardest of moments, the resilience of mankind, of how you can overcome those things. And yes, there were hard times. In that storm approaching Cape Horn, I was fighting for my life. I could have lost it like that. But again, you survive. But I overcame that loneliness sometimes 1 minute at a time. On the high seas, you don't think in terms of next week or next month. You think in terms of, what do I have to do right now to survive? And if I can overcome this, I can overcome tomorrow. I can overcome next week. So you're living moment by moment, minute by minute. And too many times in our busy lives here in the cities and in these countries, we get so caught up on the small details. We get so hung up on those minuscule things that we become totally overwhelmed. On the high seas, I only had to focus on one thing. One thing that's the underlining of my entire existence. Stay alive. And it's amazing when you're that focused, what you can totally achieve. Yes. And can we line up the next question so we also can get the mic?
Okay, good evening. It's been amazing whatever lessons came by in last 1 hour. I have a question which I don't know if it is directly in in the lines. How important or how significant do you think luck would play in one's success, one's career?
Well, the harder I work and the more successful I become, the luckier I get. We create our own luck. I truly believe that we are made up of energy. And when you do the right thing, when you sort of do the right thing for the right reasons, when you're truly convicted to what you are doing, eventually we are going to become successful. When people looked at me in the sailing arena and they said, well, you were never successful in terms of you never raised the big sponsorship. I can say I got unlucky. I never found the money for a beautiful 60-foot yacht, the latest in technology. I was unlucky. But you know what? Had I been given the sponsorship, had I been given that luck of the sponsors, I would never have built the life that I built. I would never have the story to share with you. And I'm not here by luck. I'm here by divine intervention. I'm here by sort of people coming together and working together and cooperating and making things happen. Yes, luck plays a small element, but I think luck is insignificant in what lays within ourselves. We get through our networks of people, through our relationships with people. When you make people first, when you are inclusive of people, when you want to bring people along in your journey, luck doesn't really play much of a role. But you've got to be totally prepared. You've got to show up at the right place at the right time. And you've got to recognize the opportunity. And no two people may see that opportunity the same way. And I look at so many people who've been given so many opportunities, and they missed the opportunity because they were waiting for something bigger or something better, or they were having unrealistic expectations. But success is built one increment at a time. Success happens because we are willing to put in the sweat equity. We are willing to work 7 days a week, 18, 19, 20 hours, and get the minimum amount of sleep and be back out there without the guarantee of success. It is not just the destination. It is the journey. And too many times, we are so focused on the destination. And when I thought I was racing around the world was a destination in so many ways. But truly, it only became a part of the journey that was one of many, many destinations. And today, I see myself as an adventurer, a passionate lover of life. And you can't create anything in this world without passion. You can teach these other skills, but if you don't have passion, really, what do you have? And then these elements, yes, you get lucky. Next question. We have a question up front, and we have another question back over there. So here we go, and here's the mic right up. Sir, here we go.
What you have said for the last hour, it can be summed up saying a saying of one of the greatest souls of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi. He said,
oh, yes.
He said, find a purpose, means will follow. So we have seen your life just like that. So my question is, our life is short, or at least for a limited period maybe. How much time should we give for finding the purpose, and how much time should we allocate to reach that?
Well, firstly, I want to say Mahatma Gandhi had a huge impact on my life. To me, he is the most powerful, was the most powerful man to walk the last several centuries. He had a vision for India. And his vision for India, without one shot fired, was able, through his passive resistance, to change the fate of your country and the direction of your country, and to impact so many other countries. My mother was a passionate follower as well of Gandhi. She believed totally in passive resistance. And that is partly how some of our ways of achieving democracy in South Africa came about. He had such a big impact on our country because he was a student in South Africa and then came back to India. But coming to your question is, finding your passion. Well, in each and every one of us, there is passion. But there are different levels of passion. And it is, where do we direct our energies? What is it that you truly, truly want? I look at it as, when I was putting my race together, I could not see my life complete without the race. I would always felt there was something going to be missing. So my entire world was about, how do I get to that start line, and how do I get over eventually to the finish line? I challenge you to know what your passions are and to go and follow those passions. Now, in terms of how much time do you put into the realization of those passions? Well, if you're going to spend your entire life and to try and achieve that, Harry Mitchell, it was his dream to finish that round-the-world race. It was his dream to see Cape Horn. He never got to see it. He died 2,000 miles short of it. But you know what? He lived life to the fullest. He seized every moment. He didn't die in some retirement home saying, oh, I wish I sailed the oceans of the world. Oh, I wish I dreamt of getting to Cape Horn. He died with his boots on, out there living. So I don't think we should be worried so much about the accomplishment of the goal as much as the pursuit of the goal. Because in the pursuit of the goal, in the pursuit of the dream, in the pursuit of the idea, there are going to also come other elements that's going to touch us. And each time we're going to have to make a decision. Each time we're going to have to decide, how does this add or does this take away from where we want to go? I never set out to be a motivational speaker. I set out to be a diver. And through the passion of being a diver, and I never got to do all the things in diving I wanted to do, but it became a mechanism to having a boat and the financial support behind this boat. And so I thought, when I got this boat, that I will always find the big sponsors. The big corporations will come on board and put their name on my sails, and I'll become a professional racing sailor. That never happened. But I continued on the journey, the pursuit of the passion, which led to this amazing life as an adventurer and as a keynote speaker. But again, being here does not mean this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. There are other things in the journey of success, in the journey of going from being successful to being significant, about what can we contribute? How can we all be teachers? So part of what I've been doing today, I've been teaching at the University of Charleston, the College of Charleston. I've been teaching in schools in Bermuda and in other countries. I'm living in the Dominican Republic, learning Spanish, so I can work within their impoverished communities. Again, it is about following the passion, and the rest of the details seem to fall into place, and opportunities present themselves that just take us to a whole nother place. And again, I thought I was going to marry Gwen. I thought my whole life was going to be with Gwen. She was what I was passionate about. She was the pursuit. But then certain things changed in her life that brought Darlene into my world. And together, Darlene and I are so much more suited to each other in terms of our communication, our vision, our aspirations, to be able to accomplish what others have seen as impossible. Did that answer your question? Thank you. Yes.
So I just want to ask you this personally. So do you believe in God?
Well, on the high seas, there are no atheists. So if you cannot, when I look at that beautiful sunrise or that beautiful sunset, when I watch the albatross gliding around my boat for hours, just soaring without ever flapping its wings, when I look at the power of the storms I've encountered, how can you not believe in a bigger power? Now, some people call that bigger power God. Some call it by different names. But we all have to have a spiritual belief. And I believe I'm a spiritualist. I cannot say that, I pray to Jesus Christ or I pray to Allah. No, but I really truly believe that we are all connected. And within us also lay that spirit. And so we must allow that spirit to become a part of our world and live in our world. More people have perished in the name of God, in the name of religion. More wars have been fought because of religion. That I'm not sure if that is the only answer and the only direction we need to go into. We need to start realizing that we are one universe. We are one planet, interconnected with different beliefs, who worship in different ways. But what we have to have is respect. We truly have to find that ability to respect our differences and let our differences also become the unifier of who we are. Because you know what? We only have one world. And there may be life after we leave this world. There may not be, we don't know. But it's what we do in this world. We have to live by a certain set of principles that sort of do unto thy neighbor as you'll do unto yourself. Sort of treat people with the utmost respect, with the utmost of dignity. Be humble. Remember how lucky we are, and that we truly can bring people along in our journey. And if you put people up ahead of yourself, versus just being selfish and greedy for what can you just get, I really believe we can have an amazing world. But it comes down to us collaborating, respecting each other, and sharing common visions, and being able to agree to disagree on how we do certain things. Thank you again so much for being here. I appreciate everything, and thank you for having me here in India, having Darlene and I in India.
Neal, thank you so much. Before you go, I actually wanted to invite Darlene up on stage as well. And just on behalf of everybody here, Darlene, can you please come on up and join Neal? Because we all know there's not 1 + 1 = 11, right? So, Neal, your stories made us laugh, it made us cry, it inspired us, but most importantly, I think it empowered each and every person in this room to really overcome our own barriers. So for that, thank you so much. A big round of applause to this amazing team.
You.
Thank you very, very much. Now, Neal's book,